You want the truth. I'll give it to you raw. If he disappears after intimacy, if he vanishes the moment things get real, if every time you open your heart, he pulls back like you're holding a knife, they crave intimacy like air, but the moment they get a whiff of the real thing, they choke. Let me tell you something most people won't. Avoidants don't hate love. They're starving for it. They fantasize about it. They watch it from a distance like it's some beautiful storm rolling in, but they will never walk into the rain. Because when love gets too close, they panic. Not because you did anything wrong, but because love is a trigger. You show up with honesty, consistency, vulnerability, and he starts retreating like you pulled a gun on him. He doesn't say it out loud, but in his nervous system, closeness equals danger. He grew up somehow where connection meant chaos, where opening up meant being let down, where expressing emotions meant getting shut down, ignored, or worse, punished. So what does he do now as an adult? He repeats the same cycle. And he calls it normal. He'll give you the sparks. He'll give you the chase. He'll even give you the illusion of something real. But the moment you ask for more, the moment you show him your heart and say, here, I trust you, short circuits, he shuts down. He ghosts. He avoids. And then you start questioning yourself, was I too much? Did I come on too strong? Should I have played harder to get? No. Stop it. Stop blaming your ability to love for his inability to receive it. You need to understand this. Avoidants don't fear you. They fear what loving you will unlock inside them. They fear being seen. They fear being vulnerable. They fear that if they drop their guard, you'll see the wound underneath, and they can't risk that. So instead, they do this dance, pull you close, then push you away just enough to keep you hooked, never enough to make you feel safe. It's not love, it's survival. And it's seductive, isn't it? That hot and cold dynamic makes you obsessed. You keep thinking, if I just prove I'm safe, if I just love him better, deeper, softer, harder, stop. You are not responsible for teaching someone how to stay. Let me say it louder, you are not the rehab center for emotionally unavailable men. You are not the reward for someone who refuses to do the work. And if you keep lowering yourself to make him comfortable in his avoidance, you are shrinking your soul for someone who doesn't even know how to hold space for it. He wants love on his terms that don't cost him vulnerability, terms that don't require presence, terms that allow him to keep one foot in and one foot out. That is not connection. That's emotional manipulation, and it will leave you emotionally starved and mentally confused. You'll find yourself explaining your worth to someone who has no capacity to recognize it. You'll find yourself in bed with someone who touches your body but avoids your soul. You'll find yourself addicted to the crumbs, those little moments where he opens up just enough to keep your hope alive. And then he shuts the door again, and you're back in withdrawal. It's a trauma bond dressed in romance. A dopamine hit disguised as intimacy. Do you know what real love looks like? Real love doesn't retreat when you get honest. Real love doesn't flinch when you cry. Real love doesn't run the minute you need reassurance. Real love leans in. Real love holds the mirror and says, I see you and I'm not going anywhere. Avoidants can't do that, not because they're evil, not because they're narcissists, but because they haven't met themselves in the dark yet. They haven't sat with their pain long enough to understand that their avoidance isn't protection, it's self-sabotage. They haven't figured out that shutting people out doesn't keep them safe, it keeps them alone. But until they do that work, until they're ready to sit in the fire and face their fears, they will hurt you just to feel in control. They will make you feel like you're asking for too much, when all you're asking for is basic human connection. They will pull away when you get close, and then act confused when you feel abandoned. And if you're not careful, you'll internalize it. You'll think you are the problem. You'll think maybe you should love less. Ask for less, be less. No. Hell no. You were born to be fully met, fully seen, fully chosen, not tolerated, not breadcrumbed, not half-loved, and definitely not waiting around for someone to maybe heal enough to show up. Avoidants are running not from you, but from the part of themselves that still believes love will hurt them. That part is running their entire relationship blueprint, and unless they stop and rewrite the story, they will run from every person who tries to love them. So what do? You let them run. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't try to become more lovable for someone who can't even receive love. You hold your ground. You rise in your worth. You say, if you can't meet me here, that's fine, but I'm done meeting you in the middle when you're not even facing me. So you stop trying to be the exception to his pattern. Because the moment you recognize that his avoidance isn't about your value, that's the moment you take your power back. That's the moment you stop bending yourself backwards for someone who can't even show up straight. That's the moment you stop confusing attachment with love. Avoidants crave intimacy, but only when it's at a distance. Like watching a fire from across the street. They love the warmth, they love the light, but they're terrified of getting burned. So they keep their hands in their pockets, watching, hoping, wondering, but never daring to step into the flame. You are the flame. You're not here to your fire just to make someone else feel comfortable in the cold. Let them run, let them hide, let them choose the shadows. You rise in the light and never apologize for it. You think he's being mysterious. You think maybe he's just not ready. You think if you give it time, space, patience, he'll come around. But let me tell you something that will slap the delusion right out of your heart. He's not confused. He's not slow. He's not complicated, he's avoidant. And that hot and cold game you're romanticizing. That's not depth, that's dodging. Dodging accountability, dodging commitment, dodging emotional truth. You call it mystery, I call it emotional avoidance in a tuxedo pretending to be something it's not. He's not deep. He's not damaged in a poetic way. He's not layered like some misunderstood character in a love novel. No. What he is emotionally unavailable, and that's not a riddle you're supposed to solve. That's a pattern you're supposed to walk away from. And let me be even clearer, if he flirts but never follows through, if he opens up only to vanish the next day, if he gets close but recoils the second you express need, this isn't love playing hard to get. This is someone actively avoiding intimacy and hoping you don't notice. But you notice. Oh, you feel it. You feel it when you overanalyze every text. You feel it when your gut tells you something's off, but your heart wants to believe otherwise. You feel it in those silences and those late night spirals where you start thinking maybe it's you. Maybe you were too emotional. Maybe you scared him off. Maybe if you tone yourself down, shrink yourself, numb your needs, he'll stay. No, don't you dare. Because let's get one thing straight, people don't ghost what they value. People don't run from what they're ready for, and people who are emotionally present don't vanish when it's time to be real. Avoidants wear 1,000 masks. They'll smile through discomfort. They'll charm their way through vulnerability. They'll talk about past pain so you think they're open, but when it's time to actually be present, they're gone. They'll say, I miss you, just enough to keep your heart on a leash, but they'll never move the mountains it takes to truly show up for love. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake their inconsistency for a challenge. You'll think, if I can just be more understanding, if I can just show them I'm not like the others, let me stop you right there. You are not a love audition. You don't need to earn emotional safety. You don't need to prove your worth to someone who refuses to meet you halfway. You don't need to build a house for someone who's still hiding from their own foundation. He disappears and reappears like emotional clockwork, and you keep waiting for the version of him who felt right on day one to come back. But that version, that was a mask. That was the ideal self he presents when the connection is still light, casual, easy. But the minute he feels your heart opening, the minute he senses real emotional investment, his system freaks out. Because to him, closeness isn't safe. To him, love means danger. And so he pulls away, and instead of seeing it as the red flag it is, you chase. You analyze. You defend him to your friends. You rewrite your expectations to match his avoidance. You lower your standards, calling it love. You accept crumbs, calling it patience. You swallow your pain, calling it maturity. But deep down, you know the truth. You feel it in your chest, that sickening drop every time he disappears after a moment of connection. That ache in your soul when he ghosts you after bearing his soul to you the night before. That confusion in your mind when you ask a simple question like, where is this going? And suddenly you're the villain. Because that's what avoidants do. They make you feel like your desire for stability is the problem. Like your emotional needs are the reason they shut down. Like your love is somehow too much, too soon, too intense. No, what's too intense is trying to build something real with someone who thinks love is a threat. And I'm going to say this as clear as I can, emotional avoidance is not romantic. It is not sexy. It is not deep. It is a survival strategy rooted in fear. And if you keep romanticizing it, you will lose yourself. You'll be exhausted, constantly overthinking every interaction. You'll be drained, pouring love into a person who has a leak in their soul. You'll be numb because expressing anything real only seems to push him further away. And in the end, you won't even recognize yourself because you'll be a version of you who's walking on eggshells hoping the next time he leans in, he won't run away again. But he will, because that's what avoidants do when they're unhealed. They run, not because you scare them, but because love invites them to confront the very parts of themselves they've spent years avoiding. And until they decide to face that pain, no amount of your love will make them stay. You are not the savior. You are not the exception. You are not the one who's going to finally be different for him. The only thing that changes an avoidant is when they finally choose to stop avoiding themselves. And don't get it twisted. They know what they're doing. Maybe not consciously, maybe not maliciously, but deep down, they know when they're pushing you away. They know when they're holding back. They know when they're playing safe, playing small, and playing you. And if they're not ready to take responsibility for that, then you need to be ready to take responsibility for your peace. Because this is your life. This is your heart. This is your nervous system. And if you keep trying to force a connection with someone who treats intimacy like poison, you will poison your own sense of worth. You'll forget what it feels like to be cherished. You'll forget what it feels like to be chosen. You'll forget what it feels like to be loved without having to beg for it. And that's not love. That's limbo. That's trauma disguised as passion. That's confusion disguised as chemistry. That's emotional starvation disguised as romantic thrill. Let him be distant. Let him avoid. Let him ghost. Let him live in that space where vulnerability feels like death, but you choose aliveness. You choose truth. You choose the kind of love that doesn't run when things get deep. The kind of love that meets you in the fire, not the kind that throws you in it and calls it growth. He's not mysterious. He's not confused. He's avoidant. And the moment you stop exquiate behavior is the moment you finally room for the love you actually deserve. You keep thinking your love will be the one to change him. You keep holding on to this fantasy that if you love hard enough, stay long enough, prove yourself deeply enough, he'll wake up one day and realize she's the one. But let me burn the illusion to the ground. Your love cannot fix him. It doesn't matter how loyal you are, how nurturing you are, how patient you are. You will never be enough for a man who refuses to heal himself. You are not his mother. You are not his therapist. You are not his emotional crutch or his spiritual bandage. Stop handing CPR to someone who keeps pretending they can't breathe just to get your attention. He is not broken glass that you were born to walk barefoot over. He is a grown man making grown decisions. And if one of those decisions is to run from emotional intimacy, that is not your assignment to solve. That is a wound he needs to confront, not you. But here's what happens. He tells you he's been hurt. He tells you his ex was toxic. He tells you he's afraid of love, not ready, trying to work on himself. And suddenly you feel needed. You feel important. You feel like maybe you will be the one he finally softens for. You start loving him with all the intensity in your bones, believing that if you're just safe enough, soft enough, loyal enough, he'll stop running. But he won't. Because he's not running from you. He's running from himself. And your love, no matter how deep, cannot compete with his fear. You think you're showing him something different. You think you're creating safety. You think you're building trust, but what you're really doing, if you're not careful, is bleeding yourself dry trying to prove to a man who can't receive love that love exists. You're slowly killing your own spirit, waiting for him to come alive. And let me tell you something that might sting. He knows you love him. He knows. He sees your effort. He sees your care. He sees how hard you're trying. And he still runs, still disappears, still avoids. Because that's the point. His avoidance isn't about you not loving him right. It's about him not knowing what to do when love is real. He doesn't want to be healed, not yet. He wants to be held, but without responsibility. He wants connection without accountability. He wants the feeling of intimacy without the work of intimacy. So he gives you just enough to keep your heart tied to as a sweet text here, a vulnerable moment there, then disappears for days. And every time he comes back, your heart skips a beat, thinking this is it. This time he'll stay. But he doesn't. Because nothing changed, because you keep doing the healing for him and he keeps letting you. Let me say this straight. If you do all the emotional labor in a relationship, you are not a partner, you are a caregiver. And love is not a caregiving role. You are not supposed to carry his wounds like they're yours. You are not supposed to convince someone that you're safe. You are not supposed to feel exhausted by the very thing that's supposed to bring you peace. You think love is sacrifice. You think it's endurance. You think love is supposed to hurt a little because you've been taught that fighting for someone who's unavailable is romantic. It's not. That's codependency. That's trauma bonding. That's a nervous system screaming for oxygen while you keep calling it butterflies. And here's the twist. The more you try to prove your love, the less he respects it. Not because he's heartless, but because when someone hasn't healed, vulnerability looks like weakness to them. They see your love, and instead of appreciating it, they resent it because your love reflects the very thing they don't feel worthy of. And instead of rising up to meet you in that space, they retreat deeper into avoidance, and they blame you for being too emotional, too much, too intense. But the truth is they're not overwhelmed by you. They're overwhelmed by what you represent, a level of connection they don't feel safe in. So stop thinking your love will be the one that cracks the code. Stop thinking you're the missing puzzle piece. Stop trying to be the healing they refuse to choose. You are not here to fix people. You are here to love, but love has to be received to mean anything. Love isn't love when it's thrown into a black hole of emotional avoidance. And let me be brutal, loving someone who won't heal will make you sick. You'll start doubting your instincts. You'll lose your sparkle. You'll forget what it feels like to be chosen, not because you begged for it, but because someone saw your worth on their own. You'll settle for less and call it loyalty. You'll keep giving and giving until your soul is exhausted and your heart is numb. And the worst part, he'll keep taking it, not out of cruelty, but out of habit, because you trained him to believe that you will love him regardless of how absent he is. That's not noble. That's self-destruction. There's a reason the plane tells you to put your oxygen mask on first. You cannot save someone who is committed to drowning, especially if they've convinced themselves they can breathe underwater. He doesn't need your love. He needs his own awakening. He needs to sit in his own darkness and realize that he's the one closing the door every time connection knocks. You want to heal him? Let him go. Let him feel the consequence of his avoidance. Let him miss the softness he couldn't hold. Let him sit with the silence where your love used to be. That's the real medicine. That's the real wake-up call. Not your devotion, not your sacrifice, not your endless text trying to understand him. You are not the light at the end of his tunnel. You are the light that walks away when he refuses to open his eyes. Your love is powerful. Your love is rare. Your love is sacred. Don't waste it on someone who treats it like it's disposable. Let him chase his comfort zone all the way into his own loneliness. You walk towards someone who meets you, not someone who flinches every time you show them your heart, because real love doesn't run when it gets hard. Real love doesn't ghost when it gets deep. Real love doesn't break you so it can feel safe. And if he can't show up, then he doesn't deserve a front row seat to your soul. Let that man go. Let that fantasy die. Because the version of him you're in love with isn't real, it's who you keep hoping he'll become. But healing isn't yours to give, it's his to choose. You're waiting for clarity. You're waiting for a conversation. You're waiting for the moment where he finally sits you down, looks you in the eye, and tells you the truth. But it never comes. And you keep waiting, thinking silence is just a pause, when in reality, it's a decision. His silence is the message. His inconsistency is the answer. His lack of pursuit is the clarity you've been begging for. But you keep translating absence like it means nothing. You keep trying to solve the puzzle when he's already walked away from the game. You tell yourself he's just going through something. You say maybe he doesn't know how to express himself. You keep spinning excuses like they're lifelines, but deep down your gut is screaming. Your body knows. Your intuition is practically banging on the walls of your chest, trying to get you to see what your heart keeps denying. This man is not confused, he's not busy, he's not misunderstood, he's emotionally unavailable, and you're playing translator for behavior that doesn't need translation, it needs confrontation. How many times do you need to be ignored before you believe it's intentional? How many I'm just not ready texts do you need to read before you understand that not ready is just a polite way of saying not willing for you? Because when someone wants you, you know. When someone values you, they show you. And when someone is truly invested, they don't disappear the second feelings get real. You are not someone who should have to decode affection. You are not supposed to feel confused in love. If love feels like guessing, it's not love, it's emotional warfare disguised as romance. You keep hoping he'll change. You keep waiting for the version of him you met in the beginning, the one who was charming, attentive, and different. But that version of him wasn't sustainable. That version was a sales pitch. It was the representative, not the reality. And the longer you hold on to who he was in the beginning, the longer you delay your own healing. Because the man you're dealing with now, he's inconsistent. He's dismissive. He's unavailable. And yet you keep thinking his silence is a challenge to overcome, not a boundary to respect. Let me break it to you, real love doesn't confuse you. Real love isn't built on mixed signals and disappearing acts. Real love shows up over and over, not just when it's convenient or when emotions are light and easy. Real love stays in the room when things get vulnerable. Real love doesn't flinch at intimacy. But when you're dealing with an avoidant man, you start lowering your expectations so much that you call bare minimum effort a miracle. He watches your stories but doesn't reply to your messages, and you call that engagement. He texts you after a week of silence, and you call that coming around. He gives you a little breadcrumb of affection after days of coldness, and you convince yourself that's progress. It's not. That's manipulation masked as affection. That's emotional inconsistency wrapped in just enough sweetness to keep you attached. And you're eating it up because you're starving for validation from someone who's never going to fully feed you. The silence hurts. Of course it does, because you keep making it mean something about you. You keep asking, what did I do wrong? Did I come on too strong? Should I have played it cooler? No, that's the trap. That's the poison. That's what avoidant men do. They make you doubt yourself so you stay trying harder. Because if you're trying harder, they never have to. And here's the twisted part, your chase validates them. Your pursuit confirms they still have control. And as long as you're chasing, they don't have to confront the emptiness inside them that keeps them from committing. It's easier to keep you dangling than it is to face their own emotional walls. So they stay distant and you stay hopeful, and the entire relationship becomes a dance between your effort and their avoidance. You don't need more time. You don't need another sign. You don't need one more moment of pretending that maybe he just doesn't know what he wants. He knows. He just doesn't want it with you, not because you're not worthy, not because you're not lovable, but because avoidant men cannot handle real love without first facing themselves. And until they do that, every woman who gets close will become a threat, not a gift. So stop begging for words from someone who has shown you the truth in their actions. Stop asking for reassurance from someone who can barely look their own feelings in the face. Stop lowering your voice to make space for his silence. You are not meant to shrink yourself just to be easier to love. You are not meant to wait in limbo while he figures out how to be present. You are not meant to confuse neglect with mystique. And let me be direct, you deserve the kind of love that doesn't require detective work. The kind of love that doesn't leave you wondering. The kind of love that doesn't need to be decoded. If you're crying more than you're smiling, if you're questioning yourself more than you're trusting him, if you're waking up with anxiety instead of security, that's not love. That's a trauma pattern dressed up in false hope. The silence isn't noble. It isn't spiritual. It isn't complicated. It's avoidance. It's a man who doesn't want to be seen fully and won't allow you to be seen either. You keep showing up with your heart wide open, and he keeps closing the door, not because you're wrong for loving him, but because he's wrong for receiving your love while refusing to reciprocate it. You're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. You deserve emotional safety. You deserve clarity. You deserve reciprocity. But most of all, you deserve to stop confusing emotional starvation with emotional depth. Just because the connection is intense doesn't mean it's healthy. Just because there are sparks doesn't mean there's fire. And just because someone is hard to get doesn't mean they're worth the effort. Stop reading between the lines. The message is already loud and clear in his silence, in his distance, in his inability to show up. And now it's time for you to be the one who chooses clarity over chaos, because his silence may have been the loudest message of all, but your decision to finally walk away, that will be the most powerful one. You keep hearing it from your friends. You keep reading it in books. You hear it on podcasts. They all say the same thing. He's just scared of how much he feels for you. That's why he runs. That's why he avoids. That's why he pulls back every time things start getting serious. And you believe it. You hold on to it like it's gospel, because if he's scared, it means he cares, right? If he's scared, it means he feels something deep. If he's scared, it means you're not crazy for sensing the connection. It's real, but he just doesn't know how to handle it. Let me burn this lie down to ashes right now. Fear is not an excuse to mistreat you. I don't care how afraid he is. I don't care what childhood wounds he carries. I don't care how emotionally complex his inner world is. You do not get to cause confusion, chaos, and pain in the name of being scared. Love does not flinch. Love does not run when things get deep. Love does not hide behind excuses when someone shows up with an open heart. He's not scared because he feels something powerful for you. He's scared because real intimacy requires accountability. It requires effort. It requires presence. It means taking off the mask, facing your own reflection in someone else's eyes and Noah's, and to stay even when it's uncomfortable. And that's what he can't handle. That's what he avoids. Not you, not the love, but the responsibility that comes with being loved. And here's what's brutal. His fear will make you feel like the villain. His fear will turn your care into pressure, your honesty into confrontation, your love into too much. He will start to treat your affection like an attack. The more you show up, the more he withdraws. The more you open up, the more he builds walls. And then you start believing you're the problem. You start dialing yourself down. You start walking on eggshells, speaking softer, asking for less, trying to love him in a way that won't trigger his fear. But fear-based love is not real love. It's survival. It's coping. It's dysfunction. If he's constantly in fight or flight mode every time love gets close, that's not a man you can build with. That's not a man who's ready for intimacy. That's a man who's still at war with his own heart, and you're standing in the middle of the battlefield thinking your love can stop the bullets. You can't. You won't. Because fear doesn't disappear just because you love someone hard enough. Fear has to be faced, not coddled. And if he's not doing the inner work to confront his avoidance, his trauma, his resistance to connection, then all he's doing is making you pay the price for a war that started long before you ever came into the picture. And here's the mind trick he plays. He gives you just enough vulnerability to keep you hooked. Just enough eye contact to make you feel seen. Just enough I miss you to keep you hoping. So you stay thinking it's progress. You stay thinking he's growing, but he's not. He's managing you. He's feeding you just enough emotion to make sure you don't leave, but never enough to actually move the relationship forward. And that's where you die slowly, spiritually, emotionally, energetically. You start fading in the name of a connection that only exists in fragments. And you keep defending him. You tell your friends he's just never felt this way before. You convince yourself this is hard for him. You become a damn emotional contortionist, bending and twisting yourself to keep this man comfortable because you think if you just love him a little more patiently, a little more gently, a little more quietly, he'll stop being scared. But he won't, because his fear is not your burden to carry. His fear is not your problem to solve. His fear is not your assignment to complete. Do you understand how damaging it is to keep shrinking yourself because a man is too afraid to grow? You keep thinking love will heal him, but here's the secret: love only works when it's met halfway. You can't pour your whole heart into a person who doesn't even bring a cup. You can't build a future with a man who won't even show up in the present. And you can't call it love if you're the only one bleeding for it. Fear is not romantic. Fear is not mysterious. Fear is not a sign of depth. It's a sign of immaturity. It's a sign of someone who never learned how to sit with discomfort, so they run from anything that requires growth. And you keep making excuses. You keep telling yourself he's worth the wait. That maybe if you hold on long enough, one day he'll wake up and realize how much he loves you. But he already knows. He knows you love him. He knows you're loyal. He knows you're showing up. That's not the issue. The issue is he doesn't want to match that energy. He doesn't want to stretch. He doesn't want to evolve. And instead of admitting that, he hides behind fear, hoping you'll keep making excuses for him so he doesn't have to take responsibility for how he shows up. You are not the emotional training ground for men who refuse to grow. You are not here to teach someone how to love you while bleeding from the wounds they caused. You are not supposed to keep proving your worth to someone who's still deciding whether or not to believe in love. Let me tell you something that will shake your soul awake. The man who is ready won't be scared. He won't be perfect. He won't be flawless, but he won't run. He won't ghost. He won't freeze. He will lean in even when it's hard. He will choose honesty over comfort. He will do the work because he knows that love without effort is just fantasy. But an avoidant man will always hide behind fear like it's a personality trait. He'll treat his emotional unavailability like it's noble, like he's protecting you. But what he's really doing is protecting himself from accountability. And the longer you stay in that story, the longer you delay your own liberation. You want to heal? Stop calling fear love. Stop calling distance depth. Stop calling inconsistency a complicated soul. He's not complicated. He's unavailable. And if you don't walk away, you'll keep lowering the bar until you forget what it feels like to be fully seen, fully chosen, fully loved. You are not his emotional rehab. You are not his safe haven if he won't even open the door. You are not meant to love someone into readiness. Love is not CPR. Love is a two-way mirror. And if you're the only one standing in the reflection, it's time to stop looking. You are loyal to the idea of potential. That's the trap. That's the lie that's kept you stuck. You're not in love with who he is. You're in love with who he could be, who he might become. You see glimpses, sparks, fragments of the man he could transform into if he just healed, if he just opened up, if he just stopped running. You've built an entire emotional fantasy around his potential, and that fantasy is keeping you in emotional prison. You've convinced yourself that staying is love, that waiting is loyalty, that enduring the coldness, the distance, the hot and cold cycle is a testament to how deeply you care. But no, it's not love, it's self-abandonment. It's emotional starvation. It's codependency wrapped in the language of patience. You keep giving chance after chance after chance, hoping the version of him you created in your head will show up in real life. But he doesn't. And he won't. Because you can't date potential. You can't build a life with a maybe. You can't invest your soul into someone who only gives you emotional IOUs that never cash out. Stop acting like potential is currency. It's not. What matters is what he does, not what he could do. Who he is now, not who he might become someday if all the stars align and he finally decides to show up. Because you're not in a relationship with his future self. You're in a relationship with his current self. The one who won't commit. The one who disappears. The one who keeps you at arm's length but pulls you close just enough so you never fully walk away. It's not that he can't love. It's that he doesn't choose to. Not the way you need. Not the way that builds something strong. He gives you drips, not rivers. He gives you sparks, not warmth. He gives you dreams, but no plan. And that slow bleed, that steady starvation of emotional safety is breaking you down piece by piece. Because you keep thinking if you just hold on longer, if you love him harder, if you prove yourself enough, maybe you'll finally be worth his effort. But he's not waiting for you to prove anything. He already knows what you bring. He already knows your heart. That's not the problem. The problem is he doesn't want to rise to meet it. He wants to stay in his emotional comfort zone while you keep stretching, reaching, bleeding for a future that only exists in your vision. And that's what's killing you, the vision, the hope, the what if. You're addicted to the possibility of who he could be if only he'd stop avoiding love. And it's not your fault. That's how avoidant men trap you with flashes of potential. A deep conversation here, a vulnerable moment there, he'll open up just enough to hook you. He'll say just enough to keep the dream alive, but then he vanishes or shuts down or changes the subject. And you think, see, it's in there. He just needs time. No, what he needs is to take responsibility for his healing, for his emotional maturity, for his capacity to love. And if he's not doing that work, you're not in a relationship. You're in a fantasy that's costing you your peace. Stop confusing loyalty with self-destruction. Stop calling your suffering devotion. That's not strength, that's sacrifice. And you're not meant to be the sacrifice in your own love story. You're meant to be the centerpiece. You're meant to be chosen in full, not tolerated in pieces, not loved halfway, not kept on hold while he decides if he's ready to show up. Potential doesn't keep you warm at night. Potential doesn't build trust. Potential doesn't make you feel safe. Actions do. Effort does. Commitment does. How many times are you going to repaint red flags into hope? How many times are you going to ignore your own needs because you're too busy managing his emotions, his triggers, his past? You are not his therapist. You are not his emotional rehab. You are not the architect of his transformation. If he becomes the man of your dreams after you leave, let that be your final proof if never about you not being enough was about him never being ready. And you don't get bonus points in life for staying the longest with someone who refuses to grow. You don't get trophies for staying in emotional survival mode. You don't get rewarded for betraying yourself in the name of potential. You just end up drained, bitter, resentful, questioning your worth, wondering why love always feels like a battlefield instead of a home. And that's because you've been trying to turn a construction site into a castle. He is not building with you. He is building on you, using your love as scaffolding to support his own dysfunction. And you've mistaken your suffering as proof of something sacred. It's not sacred. It's sad. Because you've been taught that enduring pain is the cost of getting chosen. But real love doesn't ask you to die for it. Real love meets you. It sees you. It says you don't have to prove anything to be held here. Stop dating the story in your head. Start dating the man in front of you. Because the man in front of you, he's inconsistent. He's unavailable. He's detached. And no matter how much you love him, he won't become someone else just because you see his light. His light is not your responsibility. His growth is not your job. His potential is not your future. You want a man who shows up every day, not one who might show up someday. You want a man who chooses you in his healing, not just in his hurting. A man who builds with you, not one who asks you to carry both your weight and his. And the longer you stay, the more you teach your nervous system that love equals uncertainty, that love equals waiting, that love equals lack. And then you wonder why you feel like you're losing yourself while trying to find him. You didn't come here to rescue men from their own emotional avoidance. You didn't come here to earn love through suffering. You didn't come here to be loyal to someone's potential while they fail to be loyal to your heart. You came here for real love, love that sees you, chooses you, grows with you. And anything less than that is not romantic. It's a slow emotional death. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong man. And the sooner you stop romanticizing potential, the sooner you will reclaim your power, your peace, your clarity. Because love is not a project, it's a partnership. And if you're the only one doing the building, you're not in love, you're in bondage.